Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, August 11th, 2016. Youngest son's birthday. Happy birthday. Youngest son, whom I won't identify on the air for fear of all the crazies running around the country and acting out violently. It's real. And we have to watch out for it. Yeah, Donald Trump, he's crazy. He continues. We'll have to talk a lot about him today. I don't know. Let's see. Did he do anything crazy? I can't tell what happens in between shows anymore. It all melts into one gooey morass. But let's see. I know this morning we'll be dealing with Donald Trump accuses President Clinton of eventually President Clinton, but also President Obama, who's president currently, of founding ISIS, not finding it on the street, but founding it. Very interesting, and actually, good comment I see now going on in a conversation taking place on Twitter. William K. Wolfram, who you know as Wolfram, commenting, Sarah Palin used to say crazy things like this all the time. I can see Russia from my house. Media would say, what an idiot. Trump says Obama and Hillary founded ISIS. Media says, okay, here's what he meant. We have an explainer about what he meant. And Armando thinks it is a good point. I agree. No one interprets for Palin. For Trump, even progressives do. Yeah, we're always busy trying to figure out what is the kernel of truth behind this idiocy that he utters. I don't know. Maybe not. I have no idea why this is happening, but it is happening. It's the media's fault, largely, I'm sure, and we'll figure out exactly why while reading the media's insightful reporting on Donald Trump and other things, because actually, as it happens, the media does a pretty good job on a lot of things, and then they suck at a lot of things. But what can you do? You have to recognize the nuance in these things. Unless, of course, you're Matthew Dowd, who tweets this morning, or at least people are tweeting about his tweet this morning. It must be comforting, a comforting blanket for partisans. I hate those partisans. To look at everything as black and white makes it easier to react quickly without thinking. And, of course, people are thinking about what he has to say and reminding him that, yeah, both siderism is kind of an ideology just like that, and that must be a comforting blanket for you. Everybody hates each other. That's fantastic. And what can you do? That's our nuanced world, I guess. Okay, well, we're ready to roll on another show, or at least ready to acknowledge that it's 9 o'clock and time for another show. Daily Kos Radio, that's this, is live now. That's this time period. If you're good, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, will bring you a fresh platter of steaming hot Bridgegate. I will. There's more. I hinted at it yesterday. And, oh wow, I'm being interrupted by a tweet storm from Gideon Resnick, who is being retweeted by Noah Shachtman with plenty of good Trump tidbits. And it looks like one we might have to kind of poke our heads in on this one, or at least open up a Daily Beast article. And all the best days start with days that you start on Daily Kos, and then find some Daily Beast articles and then read some of those things. That's the way I view the world, of course, hopefully the way you do too, and so that's what you're doing here, passing the time with us in the morning. Yes, there will be more Bridgegate. There will also be more actual news and polling as Greg Dworkin waits in the wings with a new raft of stories. I'm just kind of skim to see whether Bridgegate makes it in. Chris Christie, of course, is so toast now that the nomination is over that it might not necessarily make the radar screen. But there's definitely new developments in Bridgegate. Things are going to happen. The two biggest blowhard jerks in the Republican Party vying to occupy the same space, and then one turned into lapdog lackey. Having terrible years. Don't know if their political careers will survive. Certainly we can dispense, I think, in the viability sense with Donald Trump anyway. I suppose there's always room for a comeback, and he may linger on the way Sarah Palin does, just sort of speaking to the cult crowd. But Chris Christie, geez, I don't know about that guy. This guy has problems. The court filings I mentioned briefly yesterday, including the tweets or the texts from his aides who basically were live commenting on his press conference and then commenting to one another, hey, that thing he just said was a total lie and we all know it. Gee whiz, it's going to be bad if they ever find out about this. And we did wonder at that point, why would you text such a thing? Don't you think that if you're already thinking about, well, what if they subpoena some stuff and find out, then they'll know he flat out lied. Well, if you're already thinking about subpoenas, why aren't you thinking about that text being subpoenaed? And there is an answer. The source through which I got most of that information yesterday, I don't know if she was reporting on it directly, but she has since reported on it and included all this. Andrea Bernstein, who is at WNYC, that's the NPR station, isn't it, in New York? Anyway, we've got a link to their story, the tweet that sums up the answer as to, well, what were you doing texting this thing is. Well, she says this yesterday, more on the, quote, he flat out lied text message sent by a Christie staffer. After she sent it, she deleted it. Then she testified under oath and kept mum about it. So she was thinking ahead about what if they discover this thing. The answer is, I will delete the record and lie on the stand. Sounds pretty good. Sounds like she just flat out lied. Oh well, she was caught. Good morning, Greg. What do you think of that one?
Good morning. I only heard part of it, but if you're talking about Trump and his lackeys, he's screwed.
Yeah.
It's only the beginning. You know,
Screwed
they're just
by
going to pick them off one by one and build up the pyramid to get to the top.
I guess so. Yeah, this I was just following up yesterday. The story we mentioned but didn't discuss much, the new developments in the Bridgegate story over in Toast Town, USA. And the Chris Christie staffer who, I don't even know how they discovered this thing, but who texted while the governor was having his December 2000, what was it? I don't know, press conference about Bridgegate and noting to other staffers, hey, that thing he just said is a total lie. And as it turns out, good question from observers yesterday, if she was worried then about the information coming out through subpoena, why did she text something like that? And the answer is she immediately realized it was a mistake, deleted it, and then when she was asked to testify, didn't say a damn thing about it.
Right. Well, you know, people get worried and emotional and do things on the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
Very few people have ice water running in their veins.
Right.
And could, for example, give a White House correspondent dinner at the same time that Osama bin Laden is getting offed.
Yeah.
Snuffed.
Yeah.
Not everybody's like that.
No. That would have been a heck of a line, too. By the way, everybody, while you were eating, killed Osama bin Laden.
Yeah. For dessert.
And it's funny because everyone would have gone, ha ha ha.
What a joke.
That's a great one. He's funny, man. That really broke the tension in the room. And they'd go home and find out it was true.
Right. So I got this whole big pundit roundup for this morning. And the title of it, you'll recognize.
Pundit roundup.
My offer is this, nothing.
Oh, yes.
What is that from? It's from a piece by Joe Lawrence. I guess Ryan Lizza originally suggested that maybe as a unifying thing to make sure that 99% of the country votes for her, Clinton could offer something like, I don't know, the first Supreme Court spot for conservative, just as a gesture, you know, because she'll have like 5 others, you know.
Yeah.
And, so what's the big deal? And everybody will vote for her. Isn't that a great idea?
No.
And so my offer is this, nothing.
No. Yeah.
The piece citing is Joe Lawrence, writing on USA Today, a straight reporter turned opinion columnist, wrote a little bit for National Journal and then moved on to USA Today, where I think she actually has an editor slot as well. The latest crazy idea from Republicans trying to figure out what to do on election day is a negotiated surrender to Hillary Clinton. That is, they endorse her in exchange for a few small items, like they get to pick her first Supreme Court justice. One major sticking point, if she was ever foolish or desperate enough to agree to that or anything like it, she'd lose me and God knows how many other voters.
Yeah, although I guess that. Yeah, lose you to where? I mean, I shouldn't say that because then she'll go and do something crazy with it. But although she's a pretty good politician, she might know what she's doing and just say, "Oh, that never entered my mind because it's stupid."
Yeah, but that could be. And I don't hear her making any of those efforts. In the meantime, there's this fantastic cover to Time that just came out.
Oh,
which is you have a picture of it I sent. It's called Meltdown. And it's a cartoon picture of Donald Trump's face melting.
Which is good to have on your wall anywhere.
It's a real cover.
It's inside be in Donald lockers this spring or fall, whatever the season is that comes next.
Yeah, it's always relevant. Polls show that Trump has failed to grasp one of the essential truths about this extraordinary contest in a race between the two most unpopular major party nominees in modern history. It's in each campaign's interest to train the spotlight on the other. Clinton wants the race to be about Trump, which is what the publicity-addled Republican wants, too. Now, as strategy, if that's really what it is, that is pretty dumb strategy on Trump's part.
I like that both sides are working together on this.
Sure. Clinton wants it to be about Trump, and Trump wants it to be about Trump, and in fact, that is true.
Yeah. So, there you go. Matthew Dowd. You should be happy.
You should be happy. And why not? It worked for him in the Republican primaries. I got 14 million votes and won most of the states he boasts. I'm liking the way I ran in the primaries better.
I agree.
But the general election will likely be decided by groups of voters who are rarely among the cheering throngs at his rallies.
Has he seen the numbers on how many people vote in general elections?
Well, if he does, he forgot it because he doesn't pay attention for more than 35 seconds.
Because 14 million is...
Yeah, not very many. Yeah. Like 5 times that many will vote. This is a fact that Trump was only now starting to confront. I don't know why we're not leading by a lot, he admitted to a crowd of thousands in Jackson.
All right.
One reason is he's getting crushed by minority voting blocs that Republican strategists have suggested courting, such as blacks, Hispanics, and young women. Of course, women overall are not a minority.
I shouldn't say this, but did you see the Taco Bowl? Because there's the Hispanics. They're going to vote now.
Right. So I'm not sure exactly what he would put on the menu in order to attract young women, and I'm not even going to touch what he would put on the menu in terms of courting African Americans.
Don't.
All right. So, but it is really a meltdown, and the funny thing is, Time is a pretty centrist kind of publication.
Oh, I was thinking of it as the concept. Time is a centrist what? Centrist concept, like everybody has time.
Let's get back to that elevator in Einstein and talking to your kids about relativity. I'm talking about the magazine.
It's very
in all
centrist.
Capital letters. Time.
Okay. Both sides.
Time magazine.
Right.
Pretty centrist publication. So when they're starting to talk about meltdown, that's because there's a meltdown.
Yes.
So obvious even they can't avoid it.
Yeah, well, no. It's rather amazing.
Right.
The News Weekly is sort of, I don't know, the last hurrah for them, injecting themselves into this race by...
Yeah, this may be the last one. You're right. This may be the last time anybody ever cares because we have news hourlies now.
Yeah. And it's less than that. Right. Now you got to just live tweet what candidates say.
Right. You can't even, Newsweek is like pretty much only an online publication, but you can't even like come up with NewsHour because that's already taken.
Right. Yeah.
It would have to be News Minute.
Right. It's limiting. Time. It's a centrist concept, so it's not going to have a whole lot of space. Okay.
Right. Anyway, here's a nice, interesting concept piece from John Favreau, Obama's head speechwriter. Things still matter, he says. What to remember about the presidential election when Donald Trump's comeback narrative begins. All right?
Okay.
Idea is this. Trump could show up at the debates with an entirely new personality that makes him a palatable human being. For the first time in the campaign, you never know. Still, even if none of this occurs, the media will eventually grow tired of the Trump's finished storyline. It's boring. And they'll move on to the much more clickable Trump's comeback narrative. Any day now. Some Quinnipiac poll that shows a tied race in Pennsylvania will force Democrats to lose control of their bladders. Why does he know us so well? A Trump surge in a stray tracking poll will result in a CNN breaking news countdown clock that will tick down the seconds to an emergency panel of 37 pundits. The sheer hysteria of the "how could she blow this" pieces will dwarf the collective freakout that followed President Obama's first debate loss in 2012. It will not be pretty. And that's when we'll all need to stop, take a deep breath, and remember the moment. Okay? Nothing matters, nothing matters, nothing matters, except it does.
Okay.
It does. Fevre goes on to say, I'm convinced that if Donald Trump and his entire staff were replaced tomorrow with a drunken Fox News viewer chosen at random, that person would probably run a better campaign. It is a level of ineptitude that relieves me as a citizen but offends me as a political professional, and then gives examples. We all know them. So, in the coming weeks, Trump will try once again to make this election a referendum on Hillary Clinton, but this is a man who can only think about himself, who can only talk about himself, whose entire campaign is premised not on policies or vision or ideology, but on the single promise that he alone has the qualifications to lead the country. It'll always be about him. We've learned over the past few weeks that to a sizable majority of Americans, that's what really matters. That's the sizable majority who isn't voting for him, by the way. So, there isn't going to be a pivot. There just won't be.
No, he's on the 14 million track.
Right. And back to that Meltdown article. With the timepiece, they have you get that timepiece? Clever, huh?
Hey.
So you have this really good quote here. At Clinton headquarters in Brooklyn, aides still nursing scars from skirmishes with Bernie Sanders marveled at their good fortune. As in all campaigns, researchers watch every public event, read every interview, archive every tweet. On other campaigns, we would have to scrounge for crumbs, says a senior Clinton advisor. Here, it's a fire hose. He can set himself on fire at breakfast, kill a nun at lunch, waterboard a puppy in the afternoon, and that doesn't even get us to prime time.
Yes.
Right? Republicans began to openly wonder whether Trump could be trusted with the nation's nuclear arsenal. For all the comments about the Second Amendment nonsense the other day, you got to step back and look at the bigger picture. You have all the Nat security people deserting the Republican Party. You have Susan Collins. You have Chris Shays, both ways Shays, endorsing Joe Lieberman, endorsing Clinton, of all people.
Oh, yeah.
Arm his way back from irrelevance to relevance.
Yeah, and there was a rumor that he was going to endorse Trump.
Which is the only reason people paid attention to him. And then when he said he endorsed Clinton, all of a sudden it was news. Other than that, who cares?
Yeah, that's...
Back to retirement, Joe.
That's kind of funny. I wonder if I would have to give him credit for actually being smart enough to read that. If he really figured out,
I'm sure he did.
Float the other rumor, people will pay attention.
He's a complete jerk and absolutely would have thought that was clever.
I have to agree. I think it's not wise.
No, it's not wise.
I'm happy about it, but...
Got him in the news. Anyway,
okay.
Sensing an opportunity to pounce, Barack Obama declared Trump woefully unprepared for the presidency during an East Room press conference, which, again, is remarkable in and of itself, that a sitting president would say that about the election. They usually try to be above the fray and all of that. Hank Paulson, former Bush Treasury Secretary, said Trump had led a populist hijacking of one of the United States' great political parties. 50 Republicans with deep experience in national security signed a letter opposing him. A steady stream of Republican operatives and members of Congress, including Senator Susan Collins of Maine, announced that they could not vote for Trump either, even, by the way, as they defend his Second Amendment comments. Or at least excuse them.
Yeah.
This was a terrible week. And it kept going from bad to worse, says veteran Republican Sultan Scott Reed, who ran Bob Dole's 1996 campaign. He's got to stop picking fights and settling scores. And that's the thing. You can imagine him nasty as he is right now. And people were bringing up on Twitter this morning, what happens when he loses? What is his concession speech going to look like? He's going to settle every score he ever had since second grade.
Yeah. It's going to
and it's going to have to be covered, So.
Yeah. By the way, all the people now lamenting his hijacking of the party had no problem when it was the Tea Party hijacking their party.
No, this is true. But I will say something which will make me unpopular, so I'll say it.
All right.
Because, like Joe Lieberman, it's what we do in Connecticut, say unpopular things so that later you say, okay, in retrospect, that wasn't so bad.
It feels so good when you stop saying them, though.
Yeah, when you stop hitting your head against the wall, it just stops hurting. It's great.
Okay.
All right. if anything comes from this debacle of a Trump campaign,
Yes.
it's a relative newfound respect for conservative never-Trumpers, who I think will be necessary after the election, after Clinton wins, in making sure that people see that this was a legitimate result.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, okay? There's a lot of never-Trumpers out there who I don't agree with on policy, who I will outvote if I can. They are opponents. They are not the enemy. Trump is the enemy.
Okay.
People like Ann Coulter and Sean Hannity, who are complete sellouts, and weasels like Rudy Giuliani, are the enemy, not conservatives who we oppose.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. That's not. I don't see that that's going to hurt.
Well, that means
Yeah.
that. So what happens? Because this gets to something
Limited
that
purposes
Charlie
of
Pierce has been
establishing
on, and legitimately so. And it's a legitimate question. So you got all these national security people who wanted to go into Iraq, and or as they like to say, Iraq.
Yes.
YE-RAQ, Iraq, and then start a war. And now you have them endorsing Clinton. Isn't that awful? And my answer is, it depends on context.
Oh.
Right? If she's not chasing after them and they are chasing after her, and they endorse her, that doesn't mean that she endorses them in everything they've done.
That is true. Well worth noting.
Okay, well now take that a couple of further steps.
No.
The major players in that cycle who have yet to commit include Condi Rice, Colin Powell, probably more acceptable than the others, Henry Kissinger, George W. Bush. How far does this go? And when do you say, okay, too much is too much?
Hitler.
Well, yeah. So, I don't want Henry Kissinger's endorsement. But what if he endorses?
She does. Then you say.
Then you
okay,
say, well, he's not endorsing Trump, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, why is this? This isn't hard. We just reversed the usual television play. Even the conservative wacko.
Exactly.
So and so.
They're so whacked out that you couldn't even begin to trust them in policy. Even they find Donald Trump too extreme.
Right. I mean, it's the.
I don't have a
Lieberman
huge
plan
problem
reversed.
with this. I'm just bringing this up because it's going to happen, and so what? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to react? Oh my gosh, this proves everything that Bernie ever said about Hillary back in April. No, it does not actually.
Yeah, there's certainly room for navigating this. If there's partnership necessary for the limited purposes of establishing that this is a legitimate presidency,
That's my pitch.
that's good. On the other hand, since there's always another hand, or more than one,
There's always more than one.
Uh,
I personally think it would be a political mistake for her to want or accept Henry Kissinger's endorsement.
well, yes. I mean, you don't want to handle it that way necessarily.
I
but-
think he's a war criminal. But I'm just trying to put this in
people do.
context.
Yeah, but it won't be. Well, his endorsement won't be the one that helps establish the legitimacy of the presidency. I don't think. Not really.
No. But, the other side of the coin is that I could see the campaign approaching a Kissinger, a Condi Rice. I would accept Colin Powell, but I would, the others, and say, I don't want your endorsement. I want you to clearly not endorse him.
Okay. Well, there's that.
Just leave it at that. And we don't have to publicize it. I don't have to go on TV and say this is what happened.
Yeah. Well,
We'll find out about it when the emails leak.
yeah, most likely.
And if they did, and I read that, would that be a shocker? Would that be a scandal? Actually, no.
No.
Messy, because politics is messy, because life is messy. Scandal? No. It's a scandal? Implying that there's a Second Amendment solution to anything
True.
that might set out a background that not what you say, but those that hear it take it in the wrong way. That's a scandal.
Okay. I'll
Arguing with
accept
my
that.
friend Matthew Dowd this morning, who said, it's overblown. No, I said if there's a word, underblown,
I guess. Why not?
then it applies, because this is just completely and totally unacceptable. And it's unacceptable 2 days later. The news cycle moving on to something else doesn't mean that what he said 2-3 days ago is somehow more acceptable because we're not talking about it as much anymore. It's not just another one of those things. The other side of that coin, because like you said, there's always another side, is that every time you say something stupid like that, and, you know, an angel loses their wings and 3 puppies die and you lose 5 undecided voters, after a while there aren't any undecided voters left.
Yes, well, then November 9th.
Yeah, so, you know, fine. You know, you're just putting yourself in a position where that which you say, who is it? Donnie Deutsch had this interesting piece because he's a marketer. Mm-hmm. Said what happens is when you have a brand, you kind of have a brand idea. And I forget what he called it, brand points or something like that. Everything that you do that reinforces your brand doesn't necessarily move the needle, but it makes it hard for you to move away from where you are already standing. So if Trump's brand is that he's unstable,
yes,
and that he's not qualified to be president, every further thing that he says doesn't necessarily convince people that he's unstable and unqualified. People already know that. That's his brand. But by adding these extra points to that narrative, you make it impossible for him to pivot away from it. And that's their importance. Not that all of a sudden this 7th revelation of the same thing is somehow going to change somebody's mind when the first 6 didn't. It's that you can't move away from it now because you're nailed.
Wow.
So I can get into that concept. I get that.
It can work. I mean, I don't know if anything can work anymore, but it wouldn't surprise me to find out that some tried and true truths about the way these dynamics work just don't work anymore.
But you wear many hats and have had many different experiences. If you're going to list your first 7 jobs, one of them would be ad copy, right? So
yes.
the idea of marketing is not foreign to you.
No.
In any way. And so, it's got some interesting points to it.
Yes, I would think so. Although, I mean, I don't know, this is a very weird brand, I must say that.
It is a bizarre brand. How is it going? Well, the polls are not going particularly well. Oh, yeah, there's the national polls. They came out since yesterday. But the ones that I think are most interesting to talk about today are the 2 new state polls that came out late yesterday. Firstly, a superb poll, the Marquette Law Poll, run by Charles Franklin in Wisconsin. Hillary 52, Trump 37. Or as my conservative friend Josh Jordan puts it, bloodbath. That's 52 for Hillary plus 7 and Trump 37 minus 4.
Okay.
From the last poll. So Wisconsin's off the table. And then there's a new poll in New Hampshire, always a very difficult state to poll. Hardly anybody gets it right. This is WMUR. Clinton 41, Trump 31, Johnson 11, Stein 3. And in that poll, by the way, Ayotte is down 3.
All right.
So when you put those together, here's the bigger picture. 86% chance to win at Upshot, 85% chance to win at 538, 81% chance to win at PredictWise with the markets, 85% chance at Sam Wang's site. And Larry Sabato put together a Where Do We Stand Now? And I believe I sent that over to you on Skype if you want to take a look, because he's got a map. And that map shows that she's got 269.
That is okay.
Without even moving, without doing anything else. She's at 269. It's the first item I sent you there.
Okay.
And what Sabato points out is with the change in Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania is like 10 points, it's getting to be out of reach.
Yeah.
If you take the safe Democratic states, we can list them, but that comes to about 190, the ones that always go Democratic, like mine. Okay. And then the likely, which includes your Virginia, and Pennsylvania's in that category. Then just the safe and likely alone, just putting those together, is 269.
That's a lot of the.
You would need New Hampshire, or Iowa, or Nevada, or Ohio, or North Carolina, or Florida, or Georgia, or Arizona to win.
Yeah. Okay.
And she's leading in most of those. She's only down a couple of points in Arizona. She's actually leading Georgia. So, if you put all those together with the leaners, get rid of all the toss-ups and put them in one category or another, she's at 347.
That's an awful lot.
And it can grow.
Oh. Well, yeah, there are other states out there.
Right. So anyway, is Armando available in the background there?
Yeah, he says so. So let's see if we can get him to join in. I said, all right, I'll check in with you. He sent me the note that he wants to argue with you about Matt Dowd.
Oh, good.
So let's see if we can get him there. And if he's already listening, then he'll be here in a minute. And if he's not, then I'll just have sent him the note. And
The funny thing, as for the background, is this morning on Twitter I was arguing with Matthew Dowd.
Uh-huh.
So Amanda's going to come on and tell me I was wrong for arguing with Matthew Dowd.
This is that sets up
and I'm trying to figure out how this is going to end.
Nuance, man. There's like 3 positions. You're both wrong.
Yeah.
You and Matthew Dowd are both wrong about what Matthew Dowd said.
Armando, you there?
Not yet. Oh, here we go. Ready? Let's see. Let's add him in here. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, good morning, Armando.
Hey, Greg,
You're
wrong.
not flying. You're not flying. You landed somewhere.
Not today.
Has
In fact,
Armando
I'm
landed
goofing off
yet?
and not doing the work I'm supposed to do.
Aha.
Instead, I've chosen to argue with you.
I am very happy. You know, there's been a lot of people on Twitter asking you to come on and do this.
Well, here I am.
So let's do it.
Satisfying the crowd.
So what's the story?
No, it's...
I didn't set up the entire thing, so maybe you want to give us a background.
Okay, you and I have both been arguing with Matthew Dowd today.
Oh, well, then it works.
And the one thing I would take issue with your take on the radio, I didn't see it that you said that on Twitter, is I think you're entirely too soft on Dowd because it's not.
I'm too nice in general. I mean, that's just like it's a feature, not a bug.
No, this is let me actually, as you said, it's underblown, and I think that's the point. What Dowd is saying this morning is simply not acceptable. And it's truly damaging if you think he's a serious person who has some influence on the discourse. He called what Trump said about inciting violence, which he did. I mean, there's just no denying it. Just a, quote, stupid remark, unquote. It wasn't just a stupid remark. It's not an acceptable thing for him to say. At this point, yes, I'm sure he wants the best for the country. But he does. I think if he has any influence at all, today he is actively harming the country. Not unintentionally, but when you normalize Trump and you treat this as just some political stupid remark,
yeah,
it's damage. It makes us a worse country when you treat it that way.
There's 2 things I think he did today that are completely wrong. That's certainly one of them. The other one is, his shtick that, both parties stink, and so what you have to do is you have to be an Uber and disrupt. And the other thing I was hitting him on this morning is that the trouble with that, again, is delegitimizing the result. That if you do that and say both parties suck, so therefore we don't have to pay attention to what either party says, and one of those parties is going to be the winner, then what does that do for after? I've always, politics is a way to get to policy. And elections are great, but you got to govern afterwards. And, I've had 12-year beef with the Republican House for not governing. And I don't see where that helps this either. So his remarks were wrong on both counts about which one is worse, probably the violence one, because that's just so completely unacceptable. And Trump is coming from a point where he's, if not condoned violence, at least never separated himself from relatively violent remarks.
I take issue with that. He absolutely has condoned violence.
But, what's that?
He has absolutely condoned violence. He asked for protesters to get beaten up.
Yeah, I mean,
he just said
it's subtle, but yes.
No, it wasn't subtle at all. He directly said, "Beat him up."
Yeah, he hasn't said.
I didn't make that up. He said it. I mean, are we going to literally? Are we going to do this?
But it's everything but. And so you're right.
No, but it is. He said, "Be violent with
violence." So you can't even agree without him arguing.
But you made a mistake. You said he hadn't overtly condoned violence. Not only did he condone violence, he's encouraged violence.
The trouble with Trump is that, if you come from the point of view that words matter, which he does not, and say that what you say matters, which he doesn't think so, it's very difficult to put him in the same category as a normal human being. And that was the trouble with the whole...
He never says that, though. Here we disagree again. He says he's the truth teller.
Yeah, but, He lies.
Well,
what
see,
was
that's to me,
the old
that's
Lillian Hellman
unacceptable.
line about everything is a lie, including and the. That's it when it comes to.
Well, then you have to say that. He's just a liar. When has Matthew
I'm
Dowd
happy
called
to
him
say
a
that,
liar?
and I say that all the time.
You do. Matthew Dowd never does. And he calls Hillary a liar a lot.
Yeah. So the equivalence there is, of course, one of the things that we usually argue about every morning. Right? And so NBC TV last night has, there were two big firestorms today. One was Clinton's email, which isn't a firestorm. It's a discussion that's been going on for a year. And Trump's comments about the Second Amendment, which in fact are a firestorm and still are and ought to be. And so the equivalence of those two, tends to drive me nuts. And I hate normalized.
Here's my analogy to you. You're the Matthew Dowd of Louisiana in 1988 or 1990. The Republican Party has just nominated David Duke. Are you going to both sides it?
Nope.
Are you going to stupid remark it?
Nope.
Donald Trump is David Duke, but stupider. This is not an election. You can both sides.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think that again, the old conventional wisdom. I tweeted it this morning. The old conventional wisdom is Donald Trump is an existential threat, but people don't like Hillary. And the new conventional wisdom is Donald Trump is an existential threat.
Now, they a few weeks ago, or maybe even a few days ago, someone did the exercise of would Democrats support the Trump of the Democratic Party?
Right.
And we don't have any
Nobody
Trump.
could find one because there isn't
All right.
one.
And I think the closest you can come is probably an Alan Grayson type, who I think is really not well in the head.
Right.
If Alan Grayson was
but the
nominated,
difference is he couldn't be nominated because that's why we have superdelegates. But that's another story.
well, suppose he did.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't support him. I don't think I don't think he has the temperament to be president. If the Republican was, God, I'd even say Marco Rubio. I don't know. I would sit it out. I think I'd do a Susan Collins.
To be fair to Democrats, it's easy to support somebody, and I could see myself and probably was this way in the beginning. You hear about an Alan Grayson, don't know who he is, and say, this sounds good, in the Bush administration or in a conservative Republican House, talking back to these guys, good. Why not? Somebody should do that. But then when you find out about him, you go, oh, no.
Yeah, and the thing is, to me...
And so I can see, Trump, okay, he's going to talk to people, he's going to tell them the way, tell it like it is, he can do this, he's going to stick a finger in their eye, give them the middle finger, great, but then you have to find out who he is. And then you have to step back and say, no.
Yeah.
What was the finding in the Washington Post poll? That 72% of Republicans don't think Obama was born in the United States.
Yeah, still have suspicions about him not being born here.
And 46% of them voted in the primaries for Donald Trump.
Right. And there's some smaller number, 7% or so who are Trump supporters don't think he's capable and should have nowhere the capability to be near the nuclear weapons. But it doesn't matter. They're voting for him anyway.
But this isn't both sides. Listen, you can think anything you want about Hillary Clinton, but she's not Donald Trump. She's a serious person who may be wrong on everything, may even be a crook, but she's not Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did not nominate Donald Trump.
And we won't.
That disqualifies the both sides argument.
Right. The parties are not the same. And so that's one of the, again, flaws, I think, in the both sides you have to have Uber to disrupt. Well, there's problems with that. And one of them is making sure that everybody, and I have taken issue with Bernie voters and Bernie himself for this. After you lose, you don't go about saying things are rigged and delegitimize the process. We're seeing some of that show up now in the reinforcement of the narrative, and I think that was a huge mistake, and I take him to task for that. And I think the same thing is true with those who say, oh, well, both sides, they're the same. Let's look elsewhere. They're not the same. And, to reinforce a narrative that they are is just wrong.
I'm not even going to go after a Mike Pence, who I think is kind of nutty, too. I mean, he doesn't look it. He's got the silver hair and the...
Well, he's doomed his career, so you don't have to go after
deep voice, but if you look at his positions, but at least we've got to look at his positions. You don't have to look at Trump's positions. You just got to listen to what he says.
Right. There was a poll, which I thought was pretty good, by the way, that just, looking at the two vice presidential candidates, Did they change your mind about who you're voting for? And I think the majority in both said no, which means they were reasonably good choices. They're simply not an equation. They're not in the equation. This is Clinton versus Trump, and the Pence part of it and his apology tour, where he goes around and apologizes for everything that Trump ever said or did, is a non-factor. It's still about Trump.
I guess so.
Listen, it's just I've had it up to here with
David.
Dowd.
It's your show. Be quiet.
All right.
I've had it up to here with Dowd because you cannot convince me you actually believe this both sides nonsense this year, right now.
Yeah, nobody can.
And I told he doesn't respond. I say, I don't understand how you think this is helpful to your argument. Who are you persuading by trying to convince us that Clinton and Trump are just different sides of the same coin?
Himself.
I guess.
I mean, you have to keep persuading yourself, otherwise you can't keep saying it.
And this you've mentioned this Uber disrupt nonsense. What exactly is Matthew Dowd doing to Uber disrupt anything? He's on George Stephanopoulos' show.
Telling people to look at third parties, proposing third parties.
Right.
Saying
Yeah,
third
which
parties are the
one?
way to
Is
go.
he for Gary Johnson? I mean,
Well, actually,
that's okay. Be for Gary Johnson. That makes sense.
Yeah, I asked him about that, and I asked him about the fact that you keep, harping on you don't like Clinton for this and you don't like Trump for that. Fine. Are you proposing that the third and fourth and fifth, because we have a fifth, are somehow without flaw and that they shouldn't be looked at the same way? No, he's not saying that. Well,
Yeah, what
So
is
he
he
has
saying?
to be saying that in order for any of the previous stuff to make any sense. Why are we looking at a third party? Because everybody's flawed. Okay, so they're all flawed, but he's saying that the flaws are equivalent. So vote for nobody. You can have 18,000 parties and they all suck.
So that was a little sub-thread we were having this morning. That was a real head-scratcher for me, because if you follow the logic, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, the infuriating for me was when he called an incitement to political violence against his political opponent a, quote, stupid remark.
Right.
It's a stupid remark that has never been made in my memory, and I certainly don't know of any, where one presidential candidate basically incited the murder of the other presidential candidate in the United States. David and I talked about this yesterday or a couple days ago, and I think we agreed that out in the United States, it's, I think, David, you put it in terms of American exceptionalism. That's the one thing we're able to do. It's the one thing we can be unabashedly proud of. No one's ever killed the other presidential candidate before.
Right.
So a lot of countries can't say that.
3 quick reads from the Pundit Roundup this morning that were not difficult to find because there's dozens. This is Aaron Blake in the Washington Post. The defenses of Donald Trump's Second Amendment comment don't make sense. Here's why. Michael Crowley in Politico. Trump's long dalliance with violent rhetoric. Sarah Kendzior in Globe and Mail had an actually interesting one. Trump's comments are so beyond the pale they've prompted yet again speculation he's trying to get himself thrown out of the race. That's too charitable. His comments are in line with a campaign that has always been a test of his fans' limits and loyalty, of how much tolerance Americans have for bigotry, and how much power Mr. Trump can wield over his base, which I think is an insightful, not C-I, but S-I-G-H-T, insightful remark about how Trump looks at the whole thing. How far can I go and what can I make them do? So, and she points out, if somebody actually assassinated Hillary Clinton, Trump would abdicate all responsibility and luxuriate in his own might. It is adoration he wants and revenge he seeks as his beloved poll numbers fall. So the point is, the further he falls behind, the more outrageous it's going to be, and we have to expect more of this. I'm just saying it's not difficult to find these things this morning. And Dowd is just on the facts wrong because people are still talking about this as they should. And they're going to continue to talk about this because it's outrageous. It is not fading at all.
Is Dowd one of these I don't actually vote guys because I'm a journalist?
I think so.
The funny thing is,
I haven't pinned him down on that.
Okay, I'm curious. I mean, we should look for a third party because both parties are the same.
I know a lot of the political scientists
who
say that just because they want to be able to be fair when they talk to their classes.
I understand the motivation. I just then to turn around and say, well, what we really need is a third party because neither of these two appeal to me. It's like, what would it matter if they did appeal to you? You don't allow yourself to vote.
Yeah, I never understand that because, why do you want to teach your class that you don't vote?
Yeah, political science. Don't use it.
But I'll go to the basic premise of it that somehow you don't have a bias or a point of view because you didn't go vote is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, exactly.
it's a corollary to Ruth Bader Ginsburg shouldn't say what she thinks about Trump because, well, we can't have that, even though she thinks that about Trump. I mean, how does it help you that she doesn't say it? How is she going to be less biased because she didn't say what she thinks? It's ridiculous.
Now,
I know it's a convention and it's about appearances, but it's stupid.
Yep.
And for a vote, it's even worse because no one knows who you voted for. What are you talking about? You didn't vote.
Right. So don't pay any attention to any of these guys. Go out there and vote, folks. I'm going to have to slip off and actually go to work. But before I do, and I hope Armando can stay, it's, I think, important to talk about the major pivot that Donald Trump was able to pull off yesterday.
Really?
Yes.
He pivoted away from saying Hillary was the founder of ISIS, which he did last week, to saying that Obama was the founder of ISIS, which is what he said yesterday.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm trying to think. What do you think that's important, and why do you think it's smart? Because it sounds stupid. Because now Obama gets back in the fray, and that's never good for Trump. Obama is devastating when he attacks Trump.
But Trump is stuck because he has to say something like this every day. Otherwise, people stop paying attention to him, and he can't stand that.
The funny thing is, don't you think if I was running his campaign, I'd ask him to not say anything for a month so that the media can do its hatred of Hillary thing.
It has been suggested, but you know what? He doesn't take suggestions very well.
No, he's a narcissist. It has to be about him. I think that's
Yes.
That's why when people talk about him as if he has some intelligent strategy, I think that completely misreads him. He is not well mentally. He is not a mentally fit person.
Well, that's, in fact, the entire thread of the Clinton campaign, which I think when we look back on it is going to turn out to be devastating. And that is that she's all over the place, attacking him on this, attacking him on that. No, there's only one attack. The attack is he is not fit to be president, and everything is a branch of that. And in fact, every day he proves it.
And that's why talking about Obama there makes it stupid, because Obama makes that argument. Listen, when the president says one major candidate, as he did the other day, it got huge coverage. And now he'll get to say it again.
Hey, you know what's overblown? Favorable and unfavorable. Popularity.
But
if you believe that it is important, Obama happens to be popular.
Yeah, he's the most popular politician in America.
So when he says it, it matters. So why would Trump want to, antagonize him and get him back on the trail talking about birtherism and all this other stuff, which, by the way, it's good for us to put in this poll. Thank you, public policy polling, for bringing it up in the first place. I remember when everybody laughed at them for saying it. And in fact, it turns out to be a key element of this race, which we're going to hear more about before we're done. With that, I got to run, but thank you so much. Thanks, Armando, for coming on. Hope you come on a lot more often, but
Okay.
Sometimes you are flying and you can't. I get that.
I'll
get you on. I get that. Fine.
Yeah, well, next time your friend out says something that really peeves me off, I will come on again and berate you for being friends with him.
Good.
All right, wait 5 minutes.
Oh, but
exactly.
This is David Waldman's show. David Waldman, of course, Kagro in the morning, who actually is kind enough to let his friends Armando and I come on and argue about this sort of thing. And for any of you who don't remember Armando's long history
of yelling.
No. He has actually engaged people, including conservatives, for a long, long time. Cross swords and all this other stuff going way, way back. So it's not like he's not willing to directly. But
absolutely. One of my good friends is Con Carroll, who is the chief press guy for Mike Lee. I mean,
yeah. And sometimes you don't have the opportunity, but sometimes you do. So with that, take care. Thanks for listening, folks. And we'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it again because Trump is.
Holy mackerel. Okay. Well, thanks, Greg.
I didn't mean to hijack the show, but that Dowd thing got me going.
And
Truth,
I can't stand. I mean, I really get to the point where I can't stand that guy.
Yeah. Truth is, I really do like when David talks on his own show. I really, honestly.
I'll do it.
I just like him to have some coffee and take a little time off and have some breakfast.
Yeah, I gulped it down. I should have waited. Okay. I'll see you. Thanks very much, Greg. By the way, this morning's pastime on Twitter is people tweeting Obama founded X, the most ridiculous thing they can think of. So
Good.
I've seen Obama founded 9/11. Obama founded your mom is now out there. Obama founded, what was it? Obama founded your LinkedIn network. So There's all sorts of good things out there, and
all right, good.
should
That's
mock
a good
those
response. I like that.
I appreciate it. And I was going to add, I don't even know that, we were just talking about, I don't think Trump has a grand plan. I don't think he even thought about or even maybe realized that he was switching over to Obama mode. And we think it's a mistake, but I don't know. I don't even think he gave a moment's thought to, you know what I should do is in addition to saying Hillary is the founder of ISIS, I should say Obama is the founder of ISIS. He just forgot which person he was criticizing, and he was in front of a rally, and he knows if you say something's bad about Hillary, they'll go, and he probably had just done 5 minutes on Hillary, and so thought, I'll change the subject. Like you're supposed to look at the other teleprompter every once in a while to make the other half of the audience think you're paying attention to him. Obama's the founder of ISIS. Hillary's the founder of ISIS. Obama's a liar. You know what? Hillary's a liar. Ho, hey, and after 25 minutes of this, hey, Bill Clinton sucks too. Yeah. So, I
agree with you. I don't think he thinks too about anything ever.
No.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right.
He's winging it, and that's all. That's all he's doing. And I see, by the way, wow, as this goes on, to your point, or to a point of yours that you made on Twitter and that I repeated very early in the show, you were talking about how you were agreeing with somebody else's point, how Sarah Palin says something dumb and everybody says, wow, that's dumb. And then Obama. See, I'm doing the same thing. Then Trump says something dumb and everybody says, well, here's what he really meant. And that may be in part because now we have 18,000 explainer journalism sites, and so they need to explain things. But you're absolutely right. People are doing this. What I think is funny is we have this morning a quote from, or a transcript of a discussion between Hugh Hewitt and Donald Trump, in which Hugh Hewitt plays that very game, and Trump won't have any of it. Here's Haley Jackson, NBC News correspondent, tweeting the transcript here and noting, Hugh Hewitt gives Trump a way to explain Obama ISIS founder comments. Here's how Trump responded. Hewitt says, last night, you said that the president was the founder of ISIS. I know what you meant. You meant that he created the vacuum, that he lost the peace. And Trump says, no, I meant that he's the founder of ISIS. I do. He was the most valuable player. I gave him the most valuable player award. I give her too, by the way. So it's everybody. Who's the most valuable player? Now, most means one person. Here are two. Carmine said one boy, here are two. Hewitt then says, but he's not sympathetic to them. He hates them. He's trying to kill them. Trump says he was the founder. The way he got out of Iraq was the founding of ISIS. They're actually, trying to help him out of the situation, and he won't have it. And it's amazing, too, because I'm sure Hewitt is still sitting there saying, I know, I see what you're saying, but I'm just trying to explain to everybody that it's metaphorical. And Trump is saying, I know what metaphorical means. That's not it. That's what he's... I can't tell you what's happening here other than that.
Yeah, Hewitt tried to pull a Hannity for him, and Trump was having no part of it.
Right. No, but you didn't... I understand what you're saying. You weren't really saying that he literally founded ISIS. I did say that. I know you said it, but you didn't mean it. I meant it. But you didn't mean it in the literal sense. I did. I also didn't. Plus about her as well, also.
That's a very funny clip. And, I mean, listen, if we're going to take him seriously, by the way.
No, we're not going to do that.
And for some reason, Zach Beauchamp decided he was going to be the Trump whisperer for us and tell us, no, that's what he really meant was Obama's policies led to the founding of ISIS. And, of course, that's ridiculous, even if that's what he meant, which I doubt Trump has the mental capacity to even mean that. Yeah. But the elements are the Iraq War, Bush, the SOFA agreement for the withdrawal of troops in 2010, which was negotiated by George W. Bush,
who's also the founder of ISIS.
So, if you accept the wacky logic of the Trump whisperers, it still doesn't make sense because George Bush did all those things, both the war and the withdrawal troops. In fact, what people forget is in 2010, when the troops were withdrawn, John McCain made a big to-do about where's all the people giving us credit for the success and withdrawal from Iraq. Remember that?
Barely.
I know. No one remembers these things because it's 6 years ago. And, and we didn't have completely insane people as the nominees for president.
That does
but now we do.
Forget these things.
So I think we have to revisit that and say, what are you talking about? But then again, he's still saying he was vocally against the Iraq War before it started, which is a lie.
Yeah. Right.
And again, he said it on CNBC and nobody corrected him. And, I ask this question all the time because every time a reporter points out Trump's lying, I said, oh, but Hillary has the honesty problem, right?
Mm.
And, when is there going to be a Trump's lying problem segment on CNN?
Good question.
Never.
Well, yeah, CNN, I don't know. I maybe if they, they'd have to interview the right people who are willing to say it. Why they won't have, I guess I know why they won't have. David Farenthold should go on, but he works for another news organization, so they're not going to have him.
Well, they had Phil Bump on last night,
well,
and he works for the same organization as Farenthold, but
Okay.
Farenthold would be the perfect guy.
Yes.
With the deposition, which was discussed on MSNBC
there you go.
last night. I'm no big fan of Lawrence O'Donnell, but his hatred of Trump matches mine, so...
Yeah. Well, this is how you have to work this thing, I guess, is David Farenthold, right now he's like MVP at the Post, so I wouldn't want him to do this now. But
he's
I know
ISIS's MVP. He's the...
Yeah, no, he's that too. He's also the founder of ISIS. Just in case you were wondering. They took the Time Man of the Year award, and it's now the founder of ISIS award, and you're all it. That's what happened. Oh, I'm sorry, Person of the Year. They changed that, remember? I hate PC. It's so stupid. Yeah. Anyway, they would have to take him off this beat, but I know he's thinking about this already because this is the trajectory of the career of the modern journalist. The book. What book? Yeah. The book he's going to write about Donald Trump and his charitable giving and his foundation. Why is he going to write it? Won't it be too late? Won't the election be over? Yes. But this is the modern trajectory of how to get out of the humdrum newsroom existence. You strike it rich on a great beat. It was a good call. Everyone loves it, and then you write a book and you transcend the newsroom at that point.
Well, yeah, and you make good money, and he deserves it. The guy's done good work.
No, absolutely.
Let's be clear.
That's the way.
Old-fashioned.
That's meant to be a critique of the way the industry rewards its MVPs or fails to reward its MVPs. They have to go outside. You can't be a star reporter in a newsroom anymore because, really, financialization of everything, and everything has become an extractive business, and so there's not enough money to keep good reporters on the job. They just simply allow you contractually to write a book and get your bonus from outside. So you have to. That's all. It's not a critique of the reporters; it's a critique of the management.
Yeah, and that's right. And except Bloomberg pays Mark Halperin $1 million a year. And speaking of Halperin, when we talk about campaign books, Game Change 2016 is obviously what Halperin's working for here, and that's why he's been kissing Trump's butt. But would you rather read that, or would you rather read Farenthold on Trump? I think, for me, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the campaign book that I would like to read is How Did Trump Happen? That would be a title that would grab me.
I guess.
Because how did this happen? Here's a guy who spent his life lying about who he is, what he has, where he came from. The most stunning lie, and I didn't know this before I read the article.
Yes.
Was that Trump borrowed $9 million from his father's estate.
I don't think I
when he was the executor.
Well, no wonder he had to cut Fred Jr. off.
Right. How did he do that?
He just did it. And
he just did it. I'm the executor, and I'm going to borrow $9 million from the estate.
Right.
I mean, people are, no one's paying attention to that, but that's pretty outrageous.
It is, but it's like the least outrageous thing he's done.
Oh, I know, but still.
But otherwise, that would be outrageous. I mean, if that had happened to Marco Rubio, I guess we never really sustained any scandals about it because he never got close to the nomination. But that's the sort of thing that we would have been talking about for 3 or 4 days on Marco Rubio, that he's basically a chiseler and looking for money wherever he can shake it out.
The word people should be looking for here is embezzlement.
Yes.
An executor has a fiduciary responsibility to the state. He can't be just taking money out of it. People go to jail for that.
How did he pull that on his sister, the federal judge? What the hell?
I know.
Where were you sleeping?
I mean, okay. I guess maybe someone said, maybe he got everybody to agree to it. I don't know.
It could be.
I mean,
it could also be the case that Fred Trump was kind of an odious figure, and it may very well be that among his children, it's like, well, he's my dad, and I have a soft spot for him, and I love him and everything, and money's great and all, but the other Trump children may, in fact, feel very conflicted about that money. And if they're making it on their own and everything's okay and their kids' college is paid for and they're comfortable, the idea of fighting Donald in public for this
being kept on. Oops.
Right. Oh, not that. And right. But no, I mean, if you're the kind of person that would find themselves conflicted about taking Dad Fred Trump's money at all, or and you may take it and just say, well, here it is, and I don't have to be like Donald about it. But if you're the kind of person that has any qualms about it, are you going to have the stomach to fight Donald Trump over money?
No. I mean, there's a reason no one does business with him.
Yeah.
Anymore, except where he's basically a paid employee, which is what his licensing deals are. I get to call my building or my golf course Trump.
Yeah.
Here's your fee. We're done.
Anybody ever see Donald tweet about what a great time he's having at Thanksgiving with his family, his extended family, sisters, brothers?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Oh, by the way, there's been a 23rd mechanics lane placed on
yes.
the Doral golf course.
I've got that.
Another $300,000.
Set aside. Yeah, the last one was the painters. Who ended up settling, but we're at the point now where, each of these mechanics liens, the aim of which is to say, all right, look, if it's not paid, I want to force the sale of the golf course, which would be great if it could happen during the campaign. Would be pretty fun. But yes, that's true. I put that story aside, and that's one of the many things that we can go over. I'll spit out the facts basically quickly on that one if you feel like discussing it. But if not, I'll just fill in the blanks. Trump golf course renovation hit with 23rd lien, this time for $236,000. So just to be clear about that, what that means is this is the 23rd vendor and contractor who worked on the renovation of his Florida golf course and the clubhouse to sue him for non-payment, and to do it through a system that basically says, we did build that. That's what the lien system, mechanics lien system is all about. We built it for real, not you, Donald Trump. We actually used our hands to build the thing. And if we don't get paid for it, then we have a senior ownership interest in this place. You're going to have to sell it for cash and give that money to us unless you come up with what you owe us. This is the 23rd vendor to do this to him on this golf course alone.
It's very interesting, David, that no one's paying much attention, but there is a trial scheduled after the election, same month, November of this year, where Trump himself is facing a $1 billion judgment on fraud and racketeering charges for Trump University.
Yes. I mean, we've all heard about it. If he loses
that case, he'll want to take an appeal, but to take the appeal, he's going to have to post a bond. That bond is probably going to require...
That, by the way, is rigging the system.
Him doing more... I don't know. I don't think he has enough assets to put up.
Yeah, he may not.
There's going to have to be to issue the bond.
There's going to have to be some sales of assets.
I don't know what he does.
I mean, in the past, he's sold assets. That's all.
It's an interesting story, and I try to encourage the media. Say, listen, just because Trump loses the election doesn't mean you have to stop covering him. He's got this huge 3-month fraud trial that's going to come up.
Yeah.
You can have fun for 3 more months with him.
Well, that's something David Farenthold can do while he's writing his book.
Exactly.
I'll continue following him. It's great for my book. The Post will be happy to have him do it. It'll be less of a story, but since they'll likely have an interest in book sales, which, by the way, now that I'm just literally occurring to me as I'm saying it. At first, I thought, it's not often that the newsroom will necessarily have an interest in the book sales unless they have their own imprint, and there are some press conglomerates that do, and what an interesting situation that they make you go outside and write a book in order to get your bonus, but P.S. we want 10% of the sales of the book.
Jesus,
but that's
really?
the way you're going to, well, I don't know. I mean, you could work it out that way, right? I'm thinking about the management saying, well, look, we can't pay you the bonus, but we'll contractually make it easy for you to go ahead and write a book, which would otherwise be in conflict with your job here, but we'll give you a waiver to go write that book, but why don't you let us publish it, or our imprint publish it? That way we can give you a significant advance that will stand in for a bonus, but we also have to get some of that back on the backside. If you're under contract to us, we want you writing where we're going to get clicks. If you're distracted in writing the book, you're going to have to make that up to us. We want 10% of the gross sales on the book. Now, I don't know whether anybody actually has that deal or has ever proposed that deal to their newsroom, but it's a workable one, particularly if they come away
Fox
with cash.
Has its own book.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
Not a newspaper,
right.
But Fox, I assume they do the O'Reilly books. Who killed what are his crazy titles?
Regnery.
Who assassinated?
I don't know, but that's a Regnery thing, and that's separate.
Oh, it's not
ownership,
Fox.
or at least most of them. I don't know whether they're all published by Regnery, but I don't know. We should take a look. But there's definitely an interlocking directorate. There are lots of publishers have their separate, differently branded conservative label, and a lot of those publishers, the people on the board of those publishing houses are also on the boards of Fox and
oh yeah,
others.
sure.
So it works a lot like that.
It all works out.
But I was thinking, who's in a better position than anybody to do that without even necessarily having to own the imprint? No one's better positioned for that than Jeff Bezos, who says,
true.
I own the biggest bookseller in the world.
That's a great point.
Yeah, write a book. You bet. I'll make money just on the shipping of the damn thing. I don't even have to take a huge cut of your royalties.
It is interesting, though. Amazon should probably have its own imprint. I mean, given the fact that they're the number one book.
Yeah, and I don't know if they do, or certainly they could e-book it, but that lessens the cachet. The Washington Post writer is not going to want to, e-book only release something like what Farenthold could put together. But interesting as a possible business model. But that'll be pretty interesting to see whether he can pull that off. And he could follow this. I mean, this is not unrelated to the charity situation, in that it's mostly about the fraud that underlies everything Donald Trump is about. He's a rich guy. Why is he a rich guy? He owns a bunch of stuff. Well, he doesn't really own a bunch of stuff. One, companies that he controls own it, and two, he personally doesn't pay for anything, and three, even the companies that he controls that supposedly own things like Doral, he doesn't own that. He owes Doral to all of the vendors and mechanics who worked on it. So I think it's a natural progression for Farenthold to take that up after the election, to stay on the Trump beat. Anyway, by the way, with regard to the specifics of this latest suit, the 23rd lien, just so everyone knows what we're talking about, in case we get to come back to this later on, the lien, as reported by the Miami Herald here, will open up the way for a forced sale of Doral unless it's paid off. Filed on August 9th by Straticon LLC, the Martin County-based construction firm in charge of part of the $255 million renovation of the famed country club. It was famed before Trump bought it. It wasn't Trump didn't make Doral famous. According to the paperwork,
the Blue Monster,
yeah, Starticon,
one of the most famous 18th holes in golf.
He says the company says it's owed $236,472 for its work on a 3-year project, which ended in June. This is a fun part. Straticon president's name is Michael Jackson. He didn't return a call for comment. So headline, Michael Jackson sues Donald Trump, in case you want to make the thing go viral.
It's a thriller.
Yeah, there you go. The lien comes in the wake of filings by 22 other contractors or subcontractors claiming the Republican presidential nominee's Trump Endeavor 12 LLC, that's who actually owns the golf club, failed to pay their contracts in full. Why is Trump famous? He's famous because he's a rich guy. Why is he rich? Because he owns a lot of things. He doesn't own this thing. Trump Endeavor 12 LLC does, and Trump Endeavor LLC might not even own it because 23 contractors who built it didn't get paid. Do you own Doral? How? Because he's got lots of money and he paid for it? No. He said he borrowed the money to buy it, didn't pay the loan, basically on credit asked people to renovate it, didn't pay the renovators, and he's like, look at me, I'm a fabulous rich guy, I own this beautiful, gorgeous property. How much is it worth? It's worth $1 billion. Getting to the next story of the day, it's worth $1 billion. Okay, here, that's great and all, but it says here in these documents that it's worth $200,000. Well, but the publicity value of it raises it to $1 billion. Really, it adds $999 million to the yes, because that's the story of the day as far as I'm concerned. The next one, that's where David Farenthold is today, which is something they were talking about all day, all afternoon, really. Anyway, yesterday, a piece in the Washington Post called "Trump: A True Story." Did you see? I mean, you must have seen people tweeting around bits and pieces of this thing.
Is this the one about the deposition?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you should spend 30 minutes on that and go through every single one.
We might as well.
It
We might
is
as well begin now
devastating.
with that one. But yeah, before I do, I just
There's
want
30
to
of
throw
them,
in
by
one
the way.
other thing. Oh,
30.
yeah? 30 what?
30 documented lies that he admitted to in that deposition.
All right. I didn't have the number at hand. By the way,
I'm going to sign off and listen to you go through that article because I truly recommend you spend a good deal of time on that.
Feel free to
But
comment.
I just want to point out one last thing to you about Trump.
Sure. He sucks.
You know, he moved into Atlantic City and ruined it.
Right.
Or got ruined by it.
Both.
You know, then he later in the 2000s when he got some money back, he started buying golf courses when Tiger Woods was at his apex, and golf courses were, you know, high in the market. Now you might not know that country clubs are closing because they can't get enough memberships. That is, there's an over saturation of golf clubs and golf courses.
Yeah.
So the reality is the market for golf courses is drying up. And of course, that's really where Trump has his biggest actual investments outside of his own name branding. To the degree that he owns things, it's golf courses. And they're a lousy thing to own right now. But that's a story for a different day. I will sit back and listen to you discuss, I hope you discuss, the Farenthold article on the 30 lies of Donald Trump exposed in that deposition.
We'll give it a try. Thanks.
All right.
And
thanks.
let me know if there's any comments to add to that. Before I launch into this one, I just will add one other Trump note just out there this morning. Also, Glenn Kessler at Washington Post on this one with a piece he's titled, "Too Good to Check, Sean Hannity's Tale of a Trump Rescue." Guess what? It involves Sean Hannity and Donald Trump, and it's not true. So that is too good to be true, it seems. This is it. It's based on this. The Trump campaign has confirmed to Hannity.com, says Sean Hannity on his show, that Mr. Trump did indeed send his plane to make 2 trips from North Carolina to Miami, Florida, to transport over 200 Gulf War Marines back home. It's a big part of the Trump mythos. And guess what? It's not true. The heart of it, the thing you're supposed to take away from it, Trump did indeed send his plane to make 2 trips to carry 200 Marines back home. By the way, guess what? Donald Trump's personal plane, no way in hell it fits 100 Marines on it. period. It's not that kind of a plane. So what happened? It seemed like such a sweet story, Donald Trump sending his personal plane down to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, when 200 Marines were stranded after fighting in the 1991 Persian Gulf War. At least that is the story that Sean Hannity of Fox News has touted on his website for several months. But a reader was suspicious and asked the fact checker to check it out. I could have told you it wasn't true in a minute. One, once they showed me a picture of the plane, I knew immediately what it was. You will too. And two, I've seen the interior of Donald Trump's plane. It doesn't carry 100 Marines, let alone 200. The Hannity story mostly relied on the recollections of Corporal Ryan Stickney, who was a squad leader in an anti-tank company in the Marine Reserves that was called up for duty in the 90 to 91 conflict that took place after Iraq invaded Kuwait. After 5 weeks of airstrikes, the U.S. and its allies ousted Iraq in a 100-hour ground assault. The command chronology shows that 209 officers and Marines of the tow company, part of the 8th Tank Battalion for Operation Desert Shield, activated in November of 1990. Company arrived in Saudi Arabia in December, served through the end of March, before returning to Lejeune. Stickney is listed as receiving a certificate of commendation. After a few weeks in Lejeune, the part-time soldiers were scheduled to return to their base in Broward County. An article in the Sun Sentinel newspapers on the April 22nd homecoming reported that it had been marred by flight delays, forcing well-wishers to wait for hours in the sun. The article said the Marines arrived on 2 flights, one at noon and one after 5 p.m. By the way, note that they don't say, and they were flown on Donald Trump's personal plane, which would be a very interesting bit of the news item, but it's missing, isn't it? Stickney recalls being told that a mistake had been made within the logistics unit and that an aircraft wasn't available to take the Marines home on their scheduled departure date, but then Trump supposedly came to the rescue. The way the story was told to us was that Mr. Trump found out about it and sent the airline down to take care of us. Stickney has it right. The airline. He even took a photo. And here it is, right, being reproduced on Hannity.com. There outside of, and in the background here is the Trump shuttle, the old Eastern Airlines shuttle that we discussed the other day. He had just bought it, and it flew shuttle flights between LaGuardia and Washington, D.C., LaGuardia and National at the time. Our reader was suspicious because the language recalls being told. That sounds more like rumor than any confirmation. Moreover, take a close look at the photograph. That's not Trump's private plane, even at the time. That's a Boeing 727 jet that was part of a Trump shuttle fleet, an airline that Trump briefly owned before it was essentially seized by the banks, just to make connection to every other story we've been talking about this morning, because he failed to make payments on his loans. It had a white fuselage. Here's what Trump's private plane with a dark fuselage looked like in 1991. Very different. It, too, may have been a Boeing 727, but when I said that it couldn't carry 100 Marines, probably not. The interior of a commercial 727, very different from the interior of a private 727, which has all the seats ripped out with couches instead and desks and a few luxurious places for him to do his very classy loafing. Anyway, so they show the 2 different planes. It's not the same one. But once again, he's a rich guy. How do you know he's a rich guy? He owns an airline, for God's sake. No, he doesn't own the airline. He signed on the dotted line to pay for the airline, a promissory note, didn't do it. Banks took it back. He's not a rich guy. He doesn't own an airline. He never did. Trump had put the Trump shuttle up for sale on April 27th, 1990. He was already out of the business well before these guys came back. So how is it that this all happened? By September, he couldn't make loan payments, needed to cut a new deal with his bankers. By the time the tow company, the anti-tank company that we were talking about, went off to war, Trump had not paid interest on a $235 million Citibank loan for months. By the time the Warriors returned, that's right, they actually did things, he actually didn't. By the time they returned from Saudi Arabia, the banks had made it clear they would determine how and when the shuttle was sold. It was already out of his hands. Trump was in such financial straits that he even had agreed to sell his personal jet, the one that's actually his, for $6.5 million in a bid to raise cash. So how did the Trump shuttle end up in Camp Lejeune? Well, it turns out that Trump bought the shuttle from Eastern Airlines. When he did, he made a bad deal. No surprise there. He accepted an additional 5 planes instead of a lower purchase price because the market had turned south. As the Daily Beast noted in an entertaining account of Trump's foray into the airline business, the shuttle needed only 16 planes to operate a full hourly schedule at its 3 cities, with 1 or 2 jets as spares, and extra aircraft, by the way, are anathema to an airline. They don't make money sitting on the ground. So some of these extra planes were smart, right? Contracted out to the U.S. military to ferry personnel in the United States during Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm in 1990 to 1991. Lieutenant General Vernon J. Kagro, now retired, was in charge of all military airlift operations. He said relying on commercial carriers freed up military cargo aircraft for equipment transport. Kagro graciously checked his notes for the fact checker, which have been put into an oral history and declassified. There are several references to the contract for Trump's shuttle to carry personnel across the United States. No doubt about that. It worked very well. He said, and the crews loved it and really thought that we'd done something special for him, Kagro recalled in the oral history. It was a hell of a lot better than using 141s, cargo aircraft, which we could use for something else. But Kagro said, the notion that Trump personally arranged to help the stranded soldiers made little sense. I certainly was not aware of that. It doesn't sound reasonable that it would happen like that. It would not fit within how we did business. I don't even know how he would know there was a need. Think about that. How was Donald Trump going to find out that there's a couple hours delay for 200 reserve soldiers from Florida? He's not. It's not going to come up in his world. Indeed, as we have noted at the time, Trump was in constant negotiations with his bankers, seeking to prevent financial ruin. Presumably, he was rather busy. More than likely, given the proximity of the Trump shuttle to Camp Lejeune, as part of the contract, a Trump shuttle jet was dispatched from LaGuardia to pick up the troops and take them to Florida. The 5-hour gap between arrivals in Broward County suggests one plane was used to go back and forth between North Carolina and Florida. We had a pleasant exchange of emails with Stickney, but he chose not to comment for the record after learning the results of our inquiry. Hannity and the Trump campaign did not respond for requests for comment. So based on all of that, the Pinocchio test. Despite the rumors on base, it's clear Trump had nothing to do with the dispatch of the jet to Camp Lejeune. The aircraft that ferried the troops was part of the Trump shuttle fleet at a time when Trump barely had control over the airline and was frantically trying to negotiate deals with bankers to prevent the collapse of his entire business empire. The Trump shuttle had a contract with the military, and this flight home was part of that contract. Simple as that. Hannity needs to prominently correct this article. Trump, meanwhile, gets 4 Pinocchios for confirming a story that's easily debunked. So, in that context, a 31st lie. Let's go back over to the Farenthold article that we've all been waiting for. Ready? Farenthold, by the way, gets a co-byline on this with Robert O'Hara Jr. Or O'Hara Jr. gets second billing. I don't know whether that means anything. Ready? The lawyer gave Donald Trump a note, written in Trump's own handwriting. He asked Trump to read it aloud. Trump may not have realized it yet, but he had walked into a trap. He never realizes anything. Even when people are trying to help him out of traps, like Hugh Hewitt, he doesn't. He put me back in there. All right. Trump may not have realized it yet, but he walked into a trap. Peter, you're a real loser, Trump began reading. The mogul had sent the note to a reporter, objecting to a story that said Trump owned a, quote, small minority stake, unquote, in a Manhattan real estate project. Trump insisted the word small was incorrect. Trump continued reading. I wrote, is 50% small? This note was intended to indicate that you had a 50% stake in the project, correct? Said the lawyer. That's correct, Trump said. For the first time of many times that day, Trump was about to be caught saying something that wasn't true. It was mid-December morning in 2007, the start of an interrogation unlike anything else in the public record of Trump's life. Trump had brought it on himself. He had sued a reporter, accusing him of being reckless and dishonest, imagine that, in a book that raised questions about Trump's net worth. The reporter's attorneys turned the tables and brought Trump in for a deposition. That's great. If you can get Trump on the stand, you win. For 2 days straight, they asked Trump question after question that touched on the same subject, Trump's honesty. And remember who has the honesty problem in this election. The lawyers confronted the mogul with his past statements and with his company's internal documents, which often showed those statements had been incorrect or invented. The lawyers were relentless, as lawyers will be. Trump, the bigger-than-life mogul, was vulnerable, cornered, out-prepared, and under oath. 30 times they caught him. Trump had misstated sales at his condo buildings, inflated the price of membership at one of his golf clubs, overstated the depth of his past debts, and the number of his employees. Remember, he would be overstating the depth of his past debts so that it looked like he got out of a bigger hole through his business acumen than he really did. When caught, Trump sometimes blamed others for the error. Sometimes those others were Meredith McIver, by the way. Or explained that the untrue thing really was true in his mind because he saw the situation more positively than others did. Have you ever lied in public statements about your properties? The lawyer asked. I try and be truthful, Trump said. I'm no different from a politician running for office. Which, of course, now that he's a politician running for office, what does he say? I'm not like those politicians running for office. Except when he needed to get out of something, he said, oh, do I lie? Well, I'm like a politician. Anyway, you always want to put the best foot forward, he says. In his presidential campaign, Trump has sought to make his truth-telling a selling point. He nicknamed his main Republican opponent Lion Ted Cruz. He called his Democratic opponent, Hillary Clinton, a pathological liar, all caps, in a recent Twitter message. I will present the facts plainly and honestly, he said in the opening speech at the Republican convention. We cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore, nor correct at all, for that matter, it seems. Trump has had a habit of telling demonstrable untruths during his presidential campaign. The Washington Post's fact checker has awarded him 4 Pinocchios, the maximum a statement can receive, 39 times since he announced his bid last summer. I assume this didn't make the count in number 40 you just heard about the Trump jet at Camp Lejeune. In many cases, his statements echo those in the 2007 deposition. They are specific, checkable, and wrong. Trump said he opposed the Iraq War from the start. He didn't. He said he'd never mocked the disabled New York Times reporter. He had. Trump also said the National Football League had sent him a letter objecting to the presidential debate that was scheduled for the same time as a football game. It hadn't. Last week, Trump claimed that he had seen footage taken at a top-secret location and released by the Iranian government showing a plane unloading a large amount of cash to Iran from the U.S. government. He hadn't. Trump later conceded he'd been mistaken. He'd seen TV news video that showed a plane during a prisoner release. But even under the spotlight of this campaign, Trump has never had an experience quite like the deposition of December 19th and 20th, 2007. He was trapped in a room with his own prior statements and 3 high-powered lawyers. A very clear and visible side effect of my lawyer's questioning of Trump is that he was revealed as a routine and habitual fabulist, said Timothy L. O'Brien, the author Trump had sued. The Washington Post sent the Trump campaign a detailed list of questions about this deposition, listing all the times when Trump seemed to have been caught in a false or unsupported statement. The Post asked Trump whether he wanted to challenge any of those findings and whether he had felt regret when confronted with any of them. He did not answer those questions. In 2005, O'Brien, then a reporter for the New York Times, had published a book called Trump Nation, The Art of Being the Donald. We should get that. In the book, O'Brien cited people who questioned a claim at the bedrock of Trump's identity, that his net worth was more than $5 billion. O'Brien said he had spoken to 3 people who estimated the figure was between $150 million and $250 million. Still a lot of money, but less than, say, Mitt Romney. Just to point that out. And Trump's big gift is living higher than he should be able to. That's the biggest thing he's got going for him. But guess what? Trump sued. Because that's what he does. Whenever he's insulted, he sues. Or at least he threatens to sue. He later told the Post that he intended to hurt O'Brien, whom he called a low-life sleazebag. I didn't read the book, to be honest with you. I never read it. I have such disdain for it, I never read it. Then why are you suing? I don't really know. I didn't. Somebody told me. He's such a jackass. I never read it. I saw some of the things they said. He probably didn't read it. That's probably true. He doesn't read anything. But anyway, what he's trying to say by saying I didn't read it is, I don't pay attention to those things. Really? Why are you suing? Because, I don't know. Go away. You're a loser, a low-life sleazebag for asking me. I never read it. I saw some of the things they said. I said, go sue him. It will cost him a lot of money. By filing suit, Trump hadn't just opened himself up to questioning. He had opened a door into the opaque and secretive company he ran. Basically, he sues everybody. He's not used to people having lawyers as good as his and doesn't realize that when you sue, there's going to be counterclaims or there's going to be a defense mounted. And if the person has good lawyers, and sometimes people do, they're going to make it their business to embarrass you and cost you money. That doesn't happen, though, to me, because I'm rich and I have the best lawyers all the time. O'Brien's attorneys included Mary Jo White, now the chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and Andrew Seresny, now the SEC's director of enforcement. Sounds pretty good. The lawsuit had given them the power to request that Trump turn over internal company documents, and they used it. It's an awfully dumb suit to file, man. They arrived at the deposition having already identified where Trump's public statements hadn't matched the private truth. The questions began with that handwritten note and the 50% stake that wasn't 50%. Here's where we really start to get into the mind of Trump. The 30% equates to much more than 30%, Trump explained. Right away, you're in trouble. How much do you own? 50%. Isn't it true you really own 30%? Yes. So how do you reconcile that? The 30%, he says, equates to much more than 30%. Why? 30% is 30%. That's the bottom line. That's why we have numbers. But no, his reasoning was that he had not been required to put up money at the outset. By the way, another trigger for you. Why? He's rich because he owns things. Really? When you own things, it's because you have to put up cash for it. But the rich, of course, are different, and they don't have to put up cash. And that's Donald Trump's greatest trick. He learned from his father that the rich are different, that you can structure people trust that rich people will pay them back because they supposedly have a lot of money. One of the things you can do is live high on the hog like that, and you can also pay your bills. You can live on that margin. People will lend you money. As long as you do something smart with the money, you'll make more money with it, and you'll have the cash to pay back the loan out of that profits, and then you'll be able to keep the rest, and you'll get richer and richer. That's the way it really works, but the way you can make it work when you're out of money or have no intention of paying is people rely on the knowledge that that's how it works with rich people. A rich-ish looking person comes and says, I'm rich, give me a loan. You give them a loan. Because they're not, why? Because they would never countenance sitting for a deposition like this. That would be too embarrassing for them. And that's the threat. If they don't pay, you sue them, you sit them down for a deposition like this, you embarrass the hell out of them, and they know that's coming. They're smart, so they'll pay you. Except he won't. So, 30 isn't 30 in his mind. Are you saying that the real estate community would interpret your interest to be 50%, even though in limited partnership agreements, on paper, black and white, it's 30%? I added the black and white part. Seresny said, smart people would, Trump said. Again, what's happening here? How much does the contract say you own? 30%. How much do you say you own? 50%. Are you saying the real estate community would look at 30 and see 50? If they're smart, they'll read it wrong. Yes. Smart people? Smart people would say it's much more than 30%. How so? On to the next one. I was paid more than $1 million, Trump said when Seresny asked him, how much were you paid for a speech in 2005 at New York City's Learning Annex, a continuing education center? How much did you get paid for your speech? Remember, the amount that people get paid for their speeches is a huge topic in this election. I was paid more than $1 million. Seresny was ready. But how much of the payments were cash? Good question, right? That doesn't occur to the most. How much were you paid? $1 million. You and I, we say, he got $1 million cash. No, smart people know that rarely is $1 million in cash handed over in any deal like that. How much was in cash? Approximately, Trump said $400,000. Trump said, still a lot of money. But is 400,000 of anything $1 million of anything? It is not. It's at 40% of it. It's less than half. Trump said his personal math, for me, 2 + 2 = $1 million. His personal math included the intangible value of publicity. And I will say this, that's not completely outrageous. It just can't be applied like this as frequently as this, and as habitually as this, and as generously as this, there is additional intangible value. It's not 60% of the deal, though. Trump said his personal math included the intangible value of publicity. The Learning Annex had advertised his speech heavily, and Trump thought that helped his brand. Therefore, in his mind, he'd been paid more than $1 million, even though the actual payment was $400,000. That's how this guy operates. I'm worth $1 billion. Are you? Well, I'm worth $40, but there's a lot of publicity in saying you're worth $1 billion. So there you go. I mean, but again, think about the fact that he says, well, I'm such a businessman, I graduated from Wharton. You know what you can't do in Wharton? Even in the undergraduate Wharton, which is admittedly a little less rigorous than the Wharton MBA. If you're asked to take an exam and they say, show me the accounts on this thing, and you say it's $1 billion or $1 million. No, the answer is $400,000. In my mind, it's $1 million because of the intangibles. Interesting thesis, great for a paper, bad for an exam. Also bad for a deposition, as it happens. So between that and also, we need a businessman to balance the budget in this country. We just got to do, and of course, how do they all say they're going to balance the budget? Like you would around a kitchen table. How many of you around the kitchen table say, I was paid $40 for this, but why don't we just say it's $1 million? Yeah, kitchen table. Should smash you over the head with that kitchen table, you dummy. Do you actually say that, Seresny asks? When you say you got $1 million publicly, I don't break it down, Trump says. He just says to people, I got $1 million. But in my mind, I can explain away why. Okay. As the deposition went on, the lawyers led Trump through case after case after case after case after case in which he'd overstated his success. And maybe even just overstating it. Just saying it's a success is an overstatement. The lawyer played a clip from Larry King's talk show in which King asked Trump how many people worked for him. 22,000 or so, Trump said. Are those people all on your payroll? Seresny asked him. No, not directly, Trump said. Okay, there's room for fudging, right? He said he was counting employees of other companies that acted as suppliers and subcontractors to his business, who he cheats, by the way, by not paying them. 23 of them right now suing him over at Doral. But back then, he would have counted the painters and the cabinetry guys and the piano people all as employees. Suppliers and subcontractors he's counting. Can you believe this guy? Here's another one. In O'Brien's book, Trump had been quoted saying, I had 0 borrowings from my father's estate. I give you my word. Remember, of course, his business was started with a small loan of $1 million, but now he's talking about the estate. I had 0 borrowings from my father's estate. I give you my word. Echoed today, and I have 0 investments in Russia. Believe me. Under oath, though, it's a little different. Mr. Trump, have you ever borrowed money from your father's estate? I remind you, you're under oath. I think a small amount, a long time ago, Trump said. I think it was something like in the $9 million range. Remember when $1 million was a small loan? 9 times bigger. That's small too. I kind of remember it. Wow. Another one. In one of his own books, Trump had said about one of his own golf courses, membership costs $300,000. I think it's a bargain. Under oath, in fact, your memberships were not selling at $300,000 at that time, correct? We've sold many for $200,000, Trump said. So that's a no. Then Trump pushed it upward. We sold many for, I think, $250,000. But this was not the place to push it. The lawyer had an internal Trump document that showed the true figure, $200,000 per membership, Seresny said. Correct, Trump acknowledged. Right. The face, imagine the face, like when he's caught in the commercial that was aired during the Olympics, caught by David Letterman. And so your shirts are made, ties are made in China. So what? Yeah, so I'm a liar. Big deal. Trump passes the blame is the next section. In some cases, Trump acknowledged he was wrong, but not that he was at fault. Instead, he sought to turn the blame on others. It's good. We're employing people in Bangladesh. That's good. No, it isn't. You're campaigning on the fact that it's not. Ready? This is where Meredith McIver comes back in. This is somebody that wrote it. Probably Meredith McIver, Trump said at one point when confronted with another false statement. That is a mistake. McIver, a staff writer at the Trump Organization, blazed into the public eye last month for having inserted plagiarized material taken from Michelle Obama's 2008 convention speech in the convention speech for Trump's third wife, Melania. McIver said it had been an innocent mistake. But in this deposition more than 8 years earlier, Trump was blaming her for a mistake in one of his own books, How to Get Rich. How do you make a mistake in there? In the 2004 book, co-written with McIver, Trump described his massive debt load during a low period in the early 1990s. I owed billions upon billions of dollars. $9.2 billion, to be exact, the book said, as it retold the story of his rise back to success. The depth of that financial hole made it seem even more impressive that Trump had climbed out again. But the figure was wrong. His actual debts had been much less. I pointed it out to the person who wrote the book, Trump said, meaning McIver. Right after she wrote the book? That's correct, Trump said. But before it was published? Apparently not. Then the lawyer showed Trump another book he'd written with McIver 3 years later. This is time being linear for you. In fact, it says in the book, in fact, I was $9 billion in debt. Trump read aloud. A similar error, repeated. It was McIver's fault again. She probably forgot, Trump said. How do you let them forget that? We've seen you get angry at people on television in The Apprentice, but of course that's all an act. And when you read it, did you correct it? I didn't see it, Trump said. You didn't see it? I read it very quickly, Trump said, about a book he was credited with writing. There you go. That's the kind of guy we're talking about. And by the way, with Meredith McIver, just a side note, I think we noted a couple of weeks ago, right after that whole controversy exploded, a few days after making fun of Meredith McIver and asking whether or not she really even existed, we were assured she did, and she joined Twitter to tell everybody off, including me, that, haha, screw you, I really do exist, and I don't even care what you say. I didn't really care what she said either. But as it turns out, that Meredith McIver account deleted. And I think it actually got verified at one point, but I'm not really positive of that one. But anyway, it's deleted now. Twitter was fooled. It was a hoax. Does she exist? I don't know. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you. Here's some more unsupported claims. Ready? In other cases, the lawyers prodded Trump into admitting that he had made authoritative-sounding statements without any proof behind them. These statements were another kind of untruth. They were not necessarily false. They might have been true, like he might have been secretly videotaping the models who he coaxed into changing into bikinis at Pervalago. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. I think it's likely. You're just going to have to find out. Take a look. I'm sure they're out there, but maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But Trump said them without knowing one way or the other. What basis do you have for that statement? Sarasny asked in one case about an assertion from Trump that O'Brien, the guy he's suing, had been reported to the police for stalking. I guess that was probably taken off the internet, Trump said. On to the next one. You wrote, he wouldn't even let a blogger get away with that. The president should not be able to get away with that. You wrote, O'Brien threatened sources by telling them he can, quote, settle scores with enemies by writing negative articles about them, Sarasny asked, reading Trump's words from a legal complaint. What's the basis for that statement? Again, for that legal complaint? Just my perception of him, Trump said. I don't know that he indicated anything like that to me, but I think he probably did indirectly. This is a legal filing, sir. That's it. It's my perception. The most striking example, though, was a question at the very heart of the legal case. What was Trump's actual net worth? Trump had told O'Brien he was worth up to $6 billion. But the lawyers confronted him with other documents from Trump's accountants and outside banks that seemed to show the real figure was far lower. The lawyers asked, have you ever not been truthful about your net worth? Trump's answer here Really, you should ask him if you ever been truthful, but I get what they're doing. Trump's answer here was that the truth about his wealth was, in essence, up to him to decide. My net worth fluctuates. That's probably true. And it goes up and down with the markets, and that's probably true. And with attitudes and with feelings. Those do tend to drive the markets. Even my own feelings, Trump said. But I try. Oh, my own feelings. What? The interrogation finally ended after 2 days. Trump's attorney made a final demand. I want the record to be crystal clear that every single word, every question, every answer, every word is confidential, said the attorney, Mark Ressler. In 2009, a judge dismissed Trump's case against O'Brien. Trump appealed, but in 2009, that was denied too. In other words, basically, he sued him for libel, and the defense to libel is truth. In other words, my statement was that your net worth is much lower than you say it is. You say that's libel. I say it's true. We have a deposition. We prove it's true. The case gets dismissed. But I appeal. I want to appeal that. Yeah, well, no, you can't, because the very basic facts of libel were established, or the very basic facts of defense to libel, truth of the matter asserted, has been proven. There's no appeal from this. He just thinks you can appeal anything. Now, was there any mistake of law that happened here? The law says you're suing him for libel, and a valid defense to libel is establishing the truth of that matter, and they've established it. What's the mistake of law here? They didn't allow me properly to inflate my net worth. I know they didn't, because they're a fact-finding body, you dummy. You can't appeal from that. Along the way, this once confidential deposition became part of the public record when O'Brien's attorneys attached it to one of their motions. In other words, he appeals, right? I want to have a new trial, which is a different thing from an appeal, but that's what he probably thinks he's asking for. The judge was biased. He was Mexican. Well, O'Brien people, what do you have to say about this? You want to be heard on whether or not there should be an appeal or a new trial or anything? Yeah, here, look at what happened in the trial. Staple it to them. Right? Judge reads it, says, oh my God, are you kidding me? No, you don't have any grounds for an appeal. Get out of here. But now, guess what? It's all public record. Very, very dumb lawyering on the Trump side. In a brief statement this week, Trump said he felt the lawsuit was a success despite his loss. Why? I don't know. Why not? Because that's what he has. He has successes. He's not a loser. O'Brien knows nothing about me, Trump said. His book was a total failure, and ultimately I had great success doing what I wanted to do, costing this third-rate reporter a lot of legal fees. O'Brien, now executive editor of Bloomberg View, obviously doing terribly, said Trump got that wrong. That too. The publisher and insurance companies covered the cost. Donald Trump lost his lawsuit, and unlike him, it didn't cost me a penny to litigate it, he said. There you go. That's the story of just how ridiculous. I mean, that's important to know. It's important information, don't you think? Should this guy be president of the United States? Not only does he say stupid and inflammatory things, he loves to BS about facts. And in the context of a rally, you can't put him on the stand and depose him. And he knows that. But what's amazing is how much he still relies on the threat of lawsuits to have his way with almost anything. And he actually sucks at conducting lawsuits. And lawsuits are places where he can get himself in extraordinary amounts of trouble because they can force you to tell the truth or pay the consequences when you don't. I've been wondering about that. Imagine conducting inquiries under oath, where the long arm of the law can make you pay in some way or another. If we ask you about, hey, what's this stuff about founding ISIS? Hey, what's this stuff about crooked this or that? Hey, what's all this? What about all these accusations? What if we could hold you to this? What's this Second Amendment thing? Forget, actually doing it in a courtroom, by the way. He's such a big fan. He can't wait to bring back the waterboarding Because, of course, it's not torture, which means it's okay for me to propose, hey, I'd like to clear up your Second Amendment statements. You say that we're all misunderstanding them. I think you're misleading us, again, like you did in the 2007 situation, cleared up by a deposition. But you hate courts, you hate lawyers, I'm sure you don't want to go through that again. And waterboarding's not torture, but you want to bring it back because it does work, according to you. It elicits the truth. So I propose this. I'd like to find out exactly what you really, really did mean with the Second Amendment comments. You say this, I say that. He said, she said, both sides. Let's let a little water help us decide what you really meant. How about I turn you upside down on the board and put a towel over your face, and I pour water over your face, making you think that you're drowning until you finally tell us, yes, I meant for somebody to assassinate Hillary Clinton. We'll see if that'll work. I don't see why it would hurt. I mean, personally, you ask me, I say, well, it's torture, and I don't think that that's really going to elicit anything, much less a valid confession. But you believe in it, so it's important. I think we ought to give it a try, and you ought to be willing to do it. And Sean Hannity ought to come along with you, because he said he was willing to do it too, and he owes us, quite frankly. Never got around to that, huh? All right. Well, that was a hell of a story. There's plenty more where that came from, of course, but of course we don't have time to go on all day and night about this thing. We'll get back to some of this stuff tomorrow. Let's toss in some of the other hot subjects of the day, though. Everybody happened to have noticed this one. Wow. The other day, Hillary Clinton is in Florida. She's having a campaign event, and I don't know how it happens, except that, I mean, who knows who goes into rallies and who doesn't. It is claimed, and I think Drudge noticed this first, possibly, which means that Drudge doesn't do reporting. Somebody tipped them off to this thing, which makes me think that somebody set this up, like Roger Stone, Paul Manafort somehow identify. As it turns out, the Orlando nightclub shooter, his father ends up in the audience at that Hillary campaign event in Central Florida. She may also have been in Kissimmee, which is where Trump was yesterday. And they make a big deal out of it. And somehow Drudge, who does no work whatsoever, has the news. Look at this. Who even knows who the Orlando shooter's father is? It's been in a newspaper, I know. Who knows what he looks like? He's been on TV, I'm sure, I know. But really, who recognizes him? Nobody, except for somebody who's been tipped off to this thing. That's what's going on here, but okay. So Trump spends the day grousing about it. When he gets down to Kissimmee, he's like, yeah, you think that happens by accident? Of course it was, it was arranged. She supports terrorism. That's the whole insinuation, blah, blah, blah. You know who's sitting behind you in some of these things. The people behind me right now are going to be famous because they're going to be on TV. Everybody's going to see them. Everybody saw the people from Wilmington, North Carolina reacting to his Second Amendment statements. So, okay, fine. Guess what? Turns out, sitting right behind Donald Trump, while he's saying nobody gets to sit behind the candidate without it being planned, without the candidate knowing about it, who's behind Trump? By now you would have heard it. Mark Foley, the former congressman from Florida who got kicked out of Congress by Denny Hastert and company, by the way, for basically being a predatory pedophile. You remember he's the one who's texting back and forth with House pages. They have since abolished the page program, by the way, because how about that, right? How about abolishing sexually abusing the pages? Could we do that? Well, only so much we can do with human nature. Why don't we get rid of the pages too? By the way, if you want to have background checks, you're a gun grabber and you want to ban. Why don't we ban everything? Ban cars. They banned the pages. They banned the people they were sexually harassing in all this to fix it. And guess what? They didn't fix anything because years later they ended up having to kick out, or they had already kicked out by that time, but now they're putting Denny Hastert in jail for what he was doing. And no wonder he wasn't doing anything about Foley. He was probably asking where he could get some. Anyway, Foley ends up behind him while he's making the comment that it matters who's behind you at a rally. Unbelievable. I don't know. Why even bother saying you can't make this stuff up anymore? Does it help? Does anybody feel like they know anything more about what happened in the world? I don't know. Well, there's plenty more where that came from. But I don't know how much more we can fit in here. Let me just quickly thumb through Pocket and see whether there are other items I ought to add in the few minutes before we tell you what's coming up next. I have to note this one. I'm not going to get a chance to read it today. We should discuss it just for its the value that it adds to the Trump as an abuser and Trump and the sexual harassment in general, not necessarily Trump's own sexual harassment, but that part of that picture. Big article being talked about yesterday by Katie Tur, the reporter who's been following Trump for all of the campaign. Fascinating insight, believe it or not, in Marie Claire magazine. Why not? Wasn't, that wouldn't be the place I would guess I'd see it ordinarily. I'm not usually thumbing through the pages of Marie Claire, but a great article, just sort of describing the atmosphere and how she came to cover Trump, which is an interesting story in itself, plus a very scary moment that she had on the trail, which I think goes directly to the Second Amendment type question. She recalls the story of covering an event of his in Charleston, South Carolina, in which he singles her out for criticism during the rally, and demands that she apologizes. Is this it, the one here? And did I say Charleston, South Carolina? I guess this would have been elsewhere. But the story begins with him criticizing her at a Trump rally in North Carolina, and then. No, I guess, yeah, that's right. That's not, technically not Charleston, but rather Mount Pleasant, just outside of Charleston, South Carolina, where they are having a rally inside the USS Yorktown. And Trump starts in on her. What a lie it was, what she said. What a lie. Katie Tur, what a lie it was. Third-rate reporter. Remember that. And he's pointing, and the crowd's booing as she says, ricochets off the iron hull of the USS Yorktown. An amazing scene, and in fact, she is afterwards escorted out of the event afterwards by the Secret Service, who apparently fears for her safety. It gets that crazy inside a Trump rally. Just goes to the point of the way he incites violence. The Secret Service thinks he's serious, and they say they've talked to the campaign about those Second Amendment things, and he denies that it ever happened. Very interesting, which of course leads me to the point today where I let you know that, by the way, Donald Trump's Secret Service code name is Watch List. Wink, wink. Maybe you should sue me about that one. And it all makes sense now. Okay, amazing stories, amazing things we haven't even got to. Maybe we can cram them in on Friday. Maybe not, but let me tell you this. You can always count on the stories that we didn't manage to discuss will get picked up on the after show. What do they have today on Thursday? Thank God it's Jovity Day. A Florida man, always a Florida man, claims stand your ground defenses for following his unarmed girlfriend into the women's restroom at Denny's and shooting her in the face. Totally makes sense, right? A lawsuit filed by a California black factory worker who was fired after reporting a KKK hood above his workstation will proceed. Where do people get those? And Americans deserve more than an apology for losing their homes to bank fraud closure, don't you think? Well, I know David Dayan does. They'll be covering more of that. On the last half, they'll report on artist Peter Doig, if I pronounced that one incorrectly, let me know, going to court to prove a $10 million painting is not his.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Yeah, if you know me, you know I'm not going to be familiar with the pronunciation of last names of artists, unfortunately. But what else have they got? A move over wheatgrass. How about this one? Float away seaweed crackers. Cockroach milk could be the next big superfood. Why don't you try that one and let me know how it goes. All of that, plus the Connect Act, Unite Act Daily Kos Community Calendar and more coming up next.